Hello, thank you for joining Above Replacement Radio. We talked about the first two games of each league championship series and how disappointing the 2023 MLB playoffs have been so far.
We also talked about Kim Ng's departure from the Miami Marlins and if the Marlins will regret making this decision.
Baseball isn't just numbers, numbers, numbers.
This game is not being played on computers.
You don't do that with a bunch of statistical gimmicks.
You don't put a team together with a computer.
We're talking
Weighted runs created plus,
expected WOBA,
his sweet spot rate,
defensive runs above average,
average exit velocity,
barrel rate,
xFIP,
BABIP.
SIERA.
We are Above Replacement Radio. And welcome to Above Replacement Radio, where we're talking baseball kind of whenever. I'm your host, Chris Gianta. Over there on the other side of the screen is Daniel Curran. How you doing, Daniel?
Chris, I'm doing very well today. We got some more playoffs to talk about. Obviously, the LCS has got underway since our last pod. Unfortunately, we have two 2-0 series. We don't have any 1-1s, which has really just been the theme of these playoffs completely. But it feels like next pod we'll probably be talking about the World Series preview. But it's been interesting.
Yeah. Before we get into the breakdown of these series, we do have to talk about how objectively terrible these playoffs have been, because I'm almost no longer looking forward to playoff games because I feel like I just know how they're going to end. We've had 26 playoff games so far. The losing team of the series has won a combined 2 games. It's been 8 series so far. 8 series so far, 6 sweeps. We've had 26 games, 0 extra inning games, 0 walk-offs, and
I think 4 1-run games. Maybe a little higher.
Yeah, 4 1-run games, and even the upsets haven't been cool. Like when the Diamondbacks beat the Dodgers, they just dominated them.
It was just not even a series.
Thinking back to the 2021 Red Sox over the Rays, that was an exciting series. 2019 Nationals over the Dodgers was an exciting series. Whatever upsets there have not been even exciting or really good, just radio fodder to talk about. It just has not been good so far, and probably won't be.
No, it's been brutal to watch. I mean, it's weird that obviously, the Rangers over the Astros has been kind of an upset so far, but even then, the Astros have scored how many, 3 combined runs, I think.
Yeah, and
them were in one
the Astros
game.
have not had a lead yet.
Yeah, the Astros haven't had a lead yet. Yordan Alvarez is still cool, but that's about it.
Yeah, the past 2 game twos, the Rangers got up 4-0, and it just felt like, this is kind of how it's going to be. I mean, the Astros made it close. They had some situations with runners in scoring position with bases loaded, nobody out. Didn't come through. When the Phillies went up, 2-0 in their game yesterday, it just felt like it was over. Anytime the Phillies go up, it does feel like it's over,
especially at Citizens Bank Park.
Yeah, but I feel like that's just been a constant theme throughout the playoffs. It feels like teams are just not going to come back. That's why that Braves game, which ended up meeting literally nothing, not even a change of the pitching rotation for the Phillies, not even that, but the Braves game was the Braves game where they won was so exciting because we just hadn't seen comebacks like that.
The best game of the playoffs so far has been one that meant absolutely nothing in the grand scheme of things, except for the fact that it gave us Attaboy Harper. That's the only thing that it gave us in the grand scheme of things, which is such a lame thing to be the top story.
Yeah, it's not even that. It's not even that fun. It was fun to talk about for about less than 24 hours. But it didn't even change the Phillies pitching plans. They just started Ranger Suarez again. They were able to have Wheeler and Nola games 1 and 2 of the NLCS. It changed absolutely nothing. It sold some more tickets to Citizens Bank Park, which is cool. Good for the people over there. But and John Middleton.
It probably didn't even. I think they would have gotten the same attendance regardless of if he said that or not.
Oh no, I meant that they had a game 4 so that they had extra
Yeah,
tickets from that.
fair enough.
Um but yeah, no. It's been pretty rough. Like I came home, I was covering a game. Shout out to Monticello and Albemarle. I swear I'm going to
Yeah.
cover more games outside of those two teams, but it's just so happened that I've covered two games and they've both been Albemarle and Monticello matchups. There are 18 schools that I cover. What are the odds that I land on those two matchups? But I come back and I'm back from I'm back from that game, writing the story as the playoff game is on, and I've barely have any motivation to pay attention because these playoffs have just been so utterly just disappointing so far.
Yeah, I mean, especially like the Phillies. The Phillies are just such a machine that like they're not even that fun to watch because it just feels like it's over in the. It's fun that they're hitting a million home runs. Don't get me wrong, and it's also fun that like Trey Turner's going off. Bryce Harper obviously is just endlessly fun to watch in the playoffs. Nick Castellanos has been going off. Kyle Schwarber at the top of the lineup where he belongs has been awesome. But like their opponents are just out of it by the fourth inning every time. It feels like.
Yeah, I guess like the one saving grace you could hypothetically say to these playoffs is the fact that the Phillies and Rangers are the teams that are the ones dominating. If it was like
Yeah.
the Astros and Braves, it would the I'd be so sick of it. The past
Yep.
two World Series winners. I don't need that to happen, but the fact that the Phillies are out there dominating at home, it's a different type of atmosphere, and the fact that the Rangers are out there dominating, going 7-0 in the playoffs so far, that's really cool because as we mentioned I think last episode, that franchise has the longest drought out of any team that entered the playoffs this year, so it's good to
Mhm.
see them you know go out and dominate the postseason so far. but
I
uh
thought the
but
I
yeah,
thought the Brewers technically did.
the Brewers have a
The
longer
city did, right? The city
the
did, but the
city.
franchise has
Yeah,
not. Okay,
the
makes
yeah
sense.
the
Um,
Brewers
going
have them by
back,
like two
yeah,
years
going back to how bad the playoffs been. This has been a stat. This is a stat from the TBS crew at MLB, but um, I think there have been like 25 games where, a team led after 4 innings, and only twice has the lead been taken after the four. There's only been a lead change twice after the fourth inning in these
Yeah,
playoffs, which is like not a lot of exciting comebacks, not a lot of moments. Like I said, the best individual moment has been from a team that lost every other game.
right. I think the Rangers have trailed after one singular inning. Phillies have
All
trained
playoffs.
The Phillies have trailed after two singular innings, the eighth
Yeah.
and ninth of that Braves game. Like, it seems like just teams who are losing are just lying down and dying for whatever
Yeah.
reason. Um,
I think we have some potential with the Astros going into Global Field. Like they hit very well there. Like that's where Jose Altuve hit 3 home runs in the first 3 innings of a game this year. There's you also just can't count out the Astros because they are the Astros. Hopefully if they take two, at Globe Life Field, we got a series.
yeah, I mean, if there is a team that I can trust to go out from a deficit and steal some games on the road, it is the Houston Astros. I mean, they did it last year against the Phillies, won two games at Citizens Bank Park, and even the 2019 World Series. I mean, they were down 2-0 and won all three games
Mhm.
at Nationals Park. So
I'm pretty sure they also had a losing record at home this year, if
that's
I'm not
yeah, that's
mistaken.
funny.
I believe if not a losing record, they were like not excellent at home. They were 39-42 at home this year and 51-30 on the road.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
hey,
and yeah,
that's encouraging.
my memory of Astros Rangers this year, and not that regular season really matters that much for like the head to head doesn't really translate to the postseason, but Max Scherzer did sort of get teed off by the Astros when he faced them as a Ranger.
Yeah.
So and yeah, I mean that is a little bit of news that we don't need to get too into. I mean, that's previewing the series, but Max Scherzer is back on the Rangers roster. He's starting game 3, which is pretty cool for them. I think every Ranger fan would want him in there over a guy like Andrew Heaney right now, even though Heaney's done decent, but you just have a little more confidence in a guy
Mhm.
like Scherzer. Um, but yeah, I mean, hopefully I'm rooting for a little bit of like the Astros competing here, but We'll see. I mean, do we want to get into these series now?
Yeah, we can get into this series. Just noted the Rangers also had John Gray just join them on the postseason roster. He was hurt for the uh AL Wildcard Series and the American League Division Series, so he's back. I'm assuming he's gonna start Game 4. If not him, it'll be probably Heaney or Dane Dunning. But
Yeah.
that is encouraging to have him back, obviously,
Hmm.
as well as Scherzer.
Yeah, yeah, and you know, when you have that many guys that can go out and start games, you also have guys who can come in early relief, uh, and help out from there. I mean, that's a team. That's a thing that a lot of successful postseason teams have utilized. Thinking back to the 2018 Red Sox with Eovaldi and Porcello and Sale out of the bullpen. 2020 Dodgers had Arias do very well out of the bullpen as well. It seems like that's a good option for teams, especially for teams like the 2018 Red Sox who had a rough bullpen. It's the Rangers have or at least in the regular season had kind of a rough bullpen down the stretch. Them having extra guys to go out there, that's going to help them out tremendously, and I guess it already has in a way. Yeah, the Rangers have a 2-0 lead over the Astros. I mean, went into Minute Maid and took the first two games. And it's been a lot to do with pitching and good situational pitching from the Rangers. In game one, the Astros had no extra base hits. They did have two barrels, and they were both outs. The Alex Bregman infamous, deep fly ball to left center field that ended up being a double play because Altuve didn't touch second base. That was a barrel, which, if that ball
If
is
that ball was 10 feet to the left, we had a tie game.
exactly. And then Jose Abreu had a 108-mile-per-hour barrel that was hit pretty much directly to the center fielder. He went back on it a little bit too, and that ended up being an out as well. So they did have a couple chances that just unfortunately went into people's gloves. But nonetheless, zero extra base hits from a pretty power heavy Astros team. Jordan Montgomery went 6 1/3, allowed no runs, one walk, 6 strikeouts with a 37% chase rate, and also had 0 barrels allowed from him. Any particular thoughts on game one?
Game one, yeah. I mean, Jordan Montgomery looked great. Oh yeah, his line you mentioned, 6 innings pitched, 6.1 innings pitched, no runs, one walk, 6 strikeouts. Yeah, I mean, not only did he, not strike a lot of guys out, not walk a lot of people, but he also had very good quality of contact given up. Um, Verlander even too. I mean, like Verlander had a very good outing. I think he had like 6 innings pitched, maybe even 7 innings pitched, 2 earned runs. There was the Leody Taveras home run off him, and then the Jonah Heim, I believe it was a single. Um, One thing that Verlander's done very well in these playoffs that's impressed me is he has become like much more of a ground ball guy. If I'm correct, because Justin Verlander in his career throughout the Statcast era has never had a ground ball rate in any season above 40%. And in the playoffs, it's like well above 40. I know it's only 2 games, so it's not a lot to go off of, but if I'm not mistaken, Justin Verlander in these playoffs, between the division series against the Twins and the championship series against the Rangers, uh, it feels like he's been doing a lot better with ground balls.
Yeah, and it sort of makes sense just throughout a career. Like his, the lower the fastball velocity goes and the lower the fastball spin rate goes, which it seems to be doing for Justin Verlander. I mean, the guy's 40
Mhm.
years old. The less you want to work top of the zone and try to induce pop-ups. But it looks like just in the regular season that ground ball rate was still pretty low. But I mean, in this, he's gotten the ground balls in the right situations. I know in the Twins start that he had in game one, I know he induced like 2 pretty big double plays. So it seems like he's pitching well to the situation.
Yeah, he did in like back-to-back innings too.
Yeah, the first and second. Um, but yeah, I mean, especially to a Rangers roster that thrives off of home runs, thrives off of power. You're a little more tentative to give up fly balls. He's done pretty well at getting pop-ups and getting ideal fly balls, meaning fly balls that are like, 35, 40, 45-degree launch angles that aren't going to leave the park typically. He's been good at that, but I think maybe with the Rangers lineup, he wants to, keep it on the ground a little bit more, even if it's not necessarily his go-to pitching style. But yeah, Montgomery was fantastic. He allowed a good bit of line drives, but he didn't allow anything powerful. That's why I mentioned the lack of barrels.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then Framber Valdez just was not, great in game two. I mean, he kind of got BABIP'd a bit, and especially in the first inning. But uh,
Yeah.
4 runs allowed in the first inning, I believe it was.
Yeah, there were a couple things, a couple batted balls that are not normally hits, and some of it is to blame on himself. There was a big error by him in the on the third batter of the game.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that I mean that first batter was Marcus Simeon. It was a non-hard hit ground ball that ended up being a hit, found the right spot. It was too far to the left of Jeremy Pena. I think he caught some glove on it, but ultimately was not able to get the out with Simeon running. And then Corey Seager, the ultimate Texas leaguer. I mean, I guess fittingly for the Rangers, it was a Texas leaguer, but it was hit
left
66,
field.
66.6 miles per hour, 42-degree launch angle. But those types of batted balls can find the perfect spot, and that's ultimately what it did. And that's not really to the fault of Framber Valdez. That wasn't barreled up at all. It just found the exact right spot. Then you have the error, and then hard hit line drive by Adolis Garcia, regular line drive hit by Mitch Garver, and bam, you got it going. Then a strikeout, then a very hard hit ground ball by Nathaniel Lowe. So yeah, there was a little bit of BABIPery, but also some quality contacts delivered from the Rangers, just a little bit.
Yeah, I know. Framber only gave up 1 home run. It was the one to Jonah Heim that went to the Crawford boxes. But yeah, I mean, he didn't look like himself in that outing overall. He only had a 50% ground ball rate,
Yeah.
which is below his average, believe it or not.
Yep.
5
Yeah.
out of 10 batted balls on the ground.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the error definitely killed him a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Just ignited the Rangers offense and literally put two more guys in scoring position. So that that was a big detractor. And yeah, you had another error that game too. So yeah, and there was some BABIPery, and it was funny because it was the only the second time this postseason that a team that was out homered won the game.
Yep.
The Rangers had less home runs than the Astros and still won. So yeah, there's going to be some balls that have to roll your way in order to do that.
Yeah. One thing that the Rangers have done very well all postseason is situational pitching. Throughout the entire postseason between the Rays series, the Orioles series, and the Astros series, opponents are hitting just 179 and slugging only 256 against the Rangers with runners in scoring position. The Rangers have been able to give up the big hit all postseason, and that's why they haven't lost yet. And then also in this series specifically, the Astros are 1 for 9 with runners in scoring position, and the one hit was a single that brought a runner from second to third. So, so they're basically 0 for 8 really, because like those kinds of hits with runners in scoring position just kind of feel like they don't count.
Yeah,
Like
right.
if you get a hit with a runner in scoring position and it doesn't score a guy, does it really count?
Yeah, because the implication of getting a hit with a runner in scoring position is that they're going to score, but
Yeah, like you're converting an opportunity to score into a run, and they ultimately were not doing.
yeah. And what does suck is a lot of the time it's just the hitter was too good. He hit the ball too hard.
Yep,
Like he
which is
didn't,
probably what happened. Yeah, because it was a single through the hole. I think it was Maldonado, but I
yeah, like he didn't ground a ball softly at 85 miles per hour through the hole and allow the runner at second
yeah,
time to score. Like it's just like he
like
had a
find
laser.
the exact window at 85 miles per hour where neither fielder would have been in a position to steal the ball.
Yeah, exactly.
which was like probably
Exactly.
impossible.
Exactly. And speaking of situational pitching, I think what a lot of this game comes down to, and a lot of what Astros fans are going to think of when they think of this loss, especially, how it ultimately came down to one run, was a bases loaded, no out situation that they were, handed and were unable to convert whatsoever. Yeah, I mean, they had bottom of the fifth, they're down 5-2. Uh, they have hitters 9-1-2 up. Yainer Diaz, who pinch hit for Martin Maldonado and is a much superior hitter to Martin Maldonado. Yainer Diaz, Jose Altuve, and Alex Bregman. You have
I
bases.
believe it was strikeout, fly, or strikeout, ground out, right?
Strikeout, ground out. And I'm trying to
Yeah.
see what the win probability added was, but I thought the baseball reference play by play had that, but
I could find the Savant one.
yeah, that might help. But I imagine that was, a big detractor of win probability added
I could see it on the graph. Yeah.
for the Astros, because I mean, bases loaded, nobody out. I wonder what the RE24 is on that, like the run expectancy, but I imagine that run expectancy is like over 2.
So this was in the bottom of the fifth inning, and um, yeah, and after the top of the fifth ended, Nathaniel Lowe flew out to end the inning. The Rangers had an 82% win probability, and then when the Astros loaded the bases, it went down to only 60%, and 10% on the Alex Bregman ground out.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
there you
Well,
go.
what was the exact thing on the Bregman ground out?
It went from 82 to 60 to 87.
Wow.
So it went up
Um,
by 5% overall, obviously, because it's less outs they needed to convert to win the game at the same
yeah,
score.
yeah. So, and also, if you don't know what RE24 is, it's just the run expectancy for each base runner and out situation. And this chart on Fangraphs is like, I don't know, 10 years old, but it's like the run environment of 2011 and now is pretty similar. So I imagine it's the run expectancy is around the same, but the run expectancy on bases loaded, nobody out is 2.3 runs. And, when you don't capitalize on that, it makes sense why you lose the game in that fashion.
Yeah, no, it absolutely does. Yeah,
And ultimately the Astros in game 2 were 0 for 6 with runners in scoring position. Um, Altuve, as I mentioned, he was one of those strikeouts in the bases loaded situation in that fifth inning. He so far is 0 for 8 with no batted balls with an expected batting average above 400. So he's not had any batted balls with a 40% or higher hit probability, and he's 0 for 8 because of that. Just hasn't been hitting a lot of like line drives or hard fly balls. Just hasn't been coming through, and he was a major factor of what got them that division. He was dominant down the stretch, but unfortunately has not delivered in these first 2 games. Any more thoughts on the series so far?
I mean, the Rangers have definitely, I think, surprised a lot of people. Um, the Astros are obviously the Astros for a reason. The ALCS has become the to see if you can beat the Astros and make it to the World Series competition. And I think the Rangers are only the second team to go up 2-0 against them. The other one being the Rays in 2020.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I found it really funny as I was watching, like, the Astros have they went to 6 straight ALCSs, and they were all against AL East teams.
Yep, and now it's against an AOS team.
Now it's against an AL West team. It's only the second time in this stretch where it's not the Red Sox or Yankees. So only the second time neither of us have a real rooting interest. And even in 2020, I mean, we were rooting hard against the Astros because of the scandal just happened.
Yeah, and also the Rays were our preseason pick.
Yeah, yeah, and which was unusual. Um, so yeah, it's kind of funny how that worked out. One thing I think I'll get into with this Phillies Diamondback series is the TBS curse could very well still be on. I think TBS has not had a an LCS longer than Fox's LCS since 2008. So that could very well still go on. They've been
Wasn't that 21 one like technically like the TBS series went longer because it was 1 day longer? They went to the same number of games.
um yeah, I think it was, so they've had the same number of games like 4 times in the stretch,
Mhm.
and less number of games like 9 times or something like that, and then yeah, more games than Fox 0 times since 2008.
Right,
So
yeah. Because 2020 was also the same length.
um yeah, both game 7.
Yeah, two
Yeah.
game sevens, which is
So
crazy to think about nowadays. Two LCS game sevens.
yeah, could you imagine? Um
We're just hoping we get two LCS game fives.
yeah, exactly. But but yeah, I could see that very well keeping going. Do we want to get into Phillies Diamondbacks?
Let's get into Phillies Diamondbacks.
So yeah, this is pretty par for the course of what I expected. Um, Especially at Citizens Bank. Like,
Yeah, I don't know. I feel weird that I picked like the Diamondbacks just have never made sense these entire playoffs. Like I picked them to get swept against the Brewers and they swept them. I picked them to get swept against the Dodgers and they swept them. You know, even if you liked the Diamondbacks against the Dodgers, I don't think anyone seriously was thinking sweep. I don't think anyone was thinking, yeah, they're gonna hold Betts and Freeman to going 1 for 21. I thought maybe they would have snuck out of Citizens Bank Park with one win just because they're so chaotic. They didn't even. I mean, they did kind of come close in game one, but nah,
yeah,
it was just the Phillies are like looked like a much better team to the point where we didn't even really mention like, oh, the Diamondbacks could come back and chase Field. They could, but it doesn't feel likely with how those first two games went.
yeah, and to add to the narrative of these playoff sucking is like neither the Astros nor the Diamondbacks have held the lead in these two
Yep.
series.
Yep.
So yeah, like yeah, the Diamondbacks, yeah, I you didn't know fully what to expect from the series given the fact that they went 5-0 against two division winners that we respected pretty well. But I think what we're seeing in these at least these first two games of the series is the narratives that prevented me from picking the Diamondbacks earlier starting to come to fruition. I did not like their offense coming into this postseason because they were a below average offense, and they've scored 2 runs off of a kind of cheap home run. And that's it. No, they've scored 3 runs. Excuse me. They scored 3 runs, 2 earned, I think. So they've scored 3 runs, which is, that's going into the narrative of them not, having a complete offense. And then also yesterday, not that it lost them the game, but their bullpen started to show some weakness. They gave up, I think, 6 runs in this series, in this game too. So I think part of it is the things that prevented us from liking the Diamondbacks earlier are starting to come out.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of what I saw the Diamondbacks as when they entered the playoffs. I was never a big fan of the Brewers heading into the playoffs, but I thought they could have at least beaten this Diamondbacks team. And that Diamondbacks team didn't come to play in Milwaukee or LA, but it seems like they've been here in Philadelphia. And uh, yeah, the Phillies are just hitting a million home runs. Like I said, I think they've hit like 19 in the last 4 games or something like that.
Um, yeah, it's
It's
been
absurd.
something else.
It's
It
absurd.
it feels like every day there's a new guy where it's like this guy, this is the most home runs in a certain game span in
Mm.
playoff history, or like
Yeah, because Nick Castellanos had the back-to-back uh, multi-homer games, and then he hit another one in the next game after that.
yeah, I think the stat was like the only other player to have 5 home runs in a 3-game playoff span was Reggie Jackson in
Yep.
1977.
Yeah, when he hit 3 in 1 game.
A guy who's literally named after the playoff month,
Yep.
Mr. October.
Yeah.
Like, Nick Castellanos did
A
that.
Hall of Famer.
Like Kyle Schwarber has 3 home runs in this series. No one really even bats an eye because it's just like, yeah, it's what the Phillies are doing.
Yeah. Well, because he's been like the fourth best player on the team.
Yeah. So yeah, and I don't even discredit you for having the Diamondbacks go 7 against them because they hadn't made sense up to this point.
Like
Now
this
they're
is
starting
when,
to make they're starting
yeah,
to make a little bit of sense.
yeah. I don't know. I hope they can maybe take 1 in Chase Field, maybe even 2 to send it back to Philadelphia because I think it'd be fun to have the Phillies clinch at home. Obviously, um,
Yeah.
I mean the way it's going right now, Phillies Rangers seems like it would be a fun World Series, but it also seems like the Phillies might just roll over them too, or the Rangers might find a way to roll over them,
Yeah, luckily so
which is literally every possibility possible.
I think they have the same record, and the Rangers swept them in that first series of the
Of
year.
the year, that's right. Yeah, dude,
So
they
Rangers
faced
would
DeGrom.
the Rangers would at least start at home, so it feels like
Yeah, what a job by the balanced schedule makers by putting the World Series on opening day of the first year.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I forgot about that. Yeah. Yeah, the Rangers
Um,
did sweep them on the opening weekend.
yeah, exactly.
Even though, yeah, DeGrom gave up a home run to I think it was Real Muto.
Uh, I know. I talked about his start in depth pretty well after.
Yeah,
It might have been Real Muto. Yeah, I think
I
it was like
think it was. I
it went
remember
to right
watching
center
it.
field.
I remember watching it in 07 Weiser
Oh yeah, yep,
way
yep.
back in those days.
I was in Townhouse 8 watching.
Sorry
But
to
yeah, it was
hear.
a Thursday, so you were pretty busy.
Yeah, it was.
Um, but yeah, regarding regarding the Phillies Diamondbacks series, like the Diamondbacks, they hadn't made sense. They scored 11 on the Dodgers game 1 and had record-setting metrics, like record-setting exit velocity and barrel numbers that we just had not seen in the playoffs in the last decade. And they had scored overall 19 runs in that Dodgers series. But now it's starting to make a little bit of sense, scoring 3 runs against this Philly staff. Like, and I guess this is a bit of a credit to Philly's roster construction versus Dodgers roster construction. I mean, it's the old adage of like starting pitching winning playoff games, but I think the Diamondbacks clearly would have a tougher time against Wheeler and Nola than they would against Kershaw. Given granted it is Kershaw, but he did have like a 5.4 ERA in his last 8 start, or 5.4 FIP in his last 8 starts, and then Bobby Miller and Lance Lynn. Like they'd rather face those 3 guys than Wheeler, Nola, and now Suarez.
Right.
Suarez has actually been doing pretty well, or at least he did well against the Braves. Yeah, it's been it's been something else. To go into some statistics on this Phillies Diamondback series, Zach Gallen, had a disappointing start. I think you would agree
First
with that.
pitch, home run.
Yep. Yeah. First pitch home run, fastball right down the pipe. 5 innings, 5 runs, 2 walks, 4 strikeouts, and 3 home runs allowed. Gallen had 7 batted balls in the sweet spot zone, hit 100 plus miles per hour, and that is the most in a playoff game in the Statcast era. So he was having some real trouble, just keeping the Phillies offense at bay and getting the good type of contact.
Yeah. No, Gallen, yeah, I mean he gave up a lot of loud contact, obviously. Gave up a lot of the right contact or the wrong contact in his case. Yeah, the Phillies hit 3 home runs off him between Harper, Schwarber, and Castellanos. Um, it's kind of weird to think that the Diamondbacks were like in that game because they were down 5-0. They made it 5-3. They had the tying run on base in each of the last 3 innings, but they were in that one.
Yeah, it is weird to think about that. We mentioned the Diamondbacks haven't had a lead, but it was competitive down the stretch, which was a little bit surprising. And as far as Zach Gallen's counterpart, Zach Wheeler, continued to do what he does in the playoffs. 6 innings pitched, 2 runs allowed, no walks, 8 strikeouts, a 40% whiff rate, 37% called strike and whiff rate, and 36% chase rate. If you're unaware, all of those are very, very well above average numbers, with the whiff rate, called strike and whiff rate, and chase rate. Also, what I found interesting with Wheeler is 4 of the 13 batted balls he allowed were pop-ups. That's a 31% pop-up rate. League average is around 8%. and he only allowed 3 batted balls in the sweet spot zone. That's less than 25%.
That's crazy.
And actually, the next stat I put down might be a little bit outdated, so I won't get into that. But I mean, I think we could get into the dominance of Zach Wheeler's playoffs so far. I mean, all 3 starts have been pretty effective. I mean, he did give up 3 runs in that Braves game, but it wasn't enough to give him a loss. He's gone 19 innings, had a 2.37 ERA, but even better, a 2.05 FIP, a 38% strikeout rate, 1% walk rate, 24% sweet spot rate against, and 14% line drive rate against. I think there's an argument that he's just the best pitcher in these playoffs right now.
He has to be. One thing that I really wonder is that, the Phillies are going to be in an interesting spot this offseason with Aaron Nola possibly leaving, with Zach Wheeler entering a contract year. Do you think maybe they just extend Zach Wheeler in this offseason? Because, I mean, right now, I mean, like I said, there's 1 year left on his contract after this year. He's not giving them a single reason not to, because he's still, he was arguably the best pitcher in the regular season. I know that his ERA wouldn't suggest that, but I believe he had the highest WAR, right? He had a very good FIP. He just had he had some tough luck with runners in scoring position this year, and he was a guy that could have been the Cy Young in 2021. He continued to dominate in 22. I think you could argue that over the last 3 seasons, no one's been a better pitcher than Zach Wheeler. No one's been more consistent. No one's been more reliable. And we've seen in these playoffs that he's taken it to another level. So I think it's very possible the Phillies maybe look into an extension of him this offseason.
Yeah, I mean, there's the concern you would have with that is age, and he's just out there throwing 97 like it's nothing.
Yep.
So that doesn't seem to be as much of a concern. I think when we talked about it with the Darvish deal, when that happened, was guys like Justin Verlander, Max Scherzer succeeding in their late 30s does, I think, give teams a little bit more of an excuse to pay pitchers well into their 30s as opposed to position players. And I could easily see Wheeler getting like a 3-year $100 million contract or a 4-year $125 million contract. Like, if I'm the Phillies, I think I'm giving that out like candy.
Yeah, I mean, and that extension would start at age 35. Like, that's not crazy old. Like, you could give him like, yeah, a 3-4 year deal, and you could maybe even still expect to see him doing well in like at least 3 of those 4 years.
Yeah, like Justin Verlander's 40. He's making $43 million this year.
Yep.
And it made sense. And
it did.
No one was criticizing that contract. He had just won a Cy Young, and Zach Wheeler is, he's not going to win Cy Young, but he's that echelon of pitcher. And we're seeing that in these playoffs with that 38% strikeout rate and 1% walk rate, which I'm not going to get over. It's pretty absurd. Going to Tuesday night, where the Phillies won, what was it, 10-0?
Yeah, it was 10-0.
Almost started losing track over there. Merrill Kelly had a real rough one. He allowed 5 barrels. By the way, a barrel it's based on a combination of how hard you hit the ball and the angle at which you hit it at. And the harder you hit it, the more the spectrum of the angle there is. And I think like at least half of barrels end up being home runs, which is why we talk about it so much. Merrill Kelly allowed 5 barrels, and that is the most allowed by a pitcher in a playoff game in the StatCast era.
Wow.
He was having a rough one. He ended up allowing I think 4 runs. Bullpen gave up 6 more. Was less due to home runs than
one to
Kelly.
Turner and one to Schwarber.
Yeah, exactly. So it was rough outing for Kelly. He had a much better outing against the Dodgers, and yeah, that was the only previous playoff start he had. Much better start against the Dodgers than he did against the Phillies. So yeah, and then Phillies pitching as a whole throughout the series, great strikeout to walk numbers, great just overall numbers. The Phillies pitching staff, whether it be Wheeler, Nola, guys out of the bullpen, 35.4% strikeout rate. League average is like 22%. They're at 35.4. 4.6% walk rate. League average is around 8%. They're at 4.6. 1 home run allowed, 1 ERA, 1.92 FIB. It seems like no matter who the Phillies are going to in whatever situation, you feel like you have a bit of confidence in them.
Yeah, I mean, the Phillies bullpen looks stacked right now. Whether it's Orion Kerkering coming out, whether it's Jeff Hoffman, whether it's Jose Alvarado, Craig Kimbrell, Matt Strom. Like every guy has gone out there and delivered for them throughout these entire playoffs. Except, Jeff Hoffman threw that one bad slider, and that's been it.
Yeah, really, that's been it. And this is the most confident we've been in a Phillies bullpen in a really really long time. More confident than last year, far more confident than the late 2010s teams that were infamous for their horrible bullpens. You have to think back to like the Brad Lidge days to think about
Yep.
how how you know how long it's been since a Phillies bullpen has been a solid bullpen like it has been. And it hasn't just been their starting pitching, it's been
No,
their
it
bullpen
hasn't.
too.
Yeah, I mean, the bullpen's been a major part of it.
Exactly. And then I think a guy who could be getting more attention just for what he's been doing the entire playoffs is Trey Turner. I tweeted out a couple of stats, and he's just been unreal. And people are talking rightfully so about a lot of different players in the Phillies. Talking about Harper and Castellanos for the most part, even Zach Wheeler. When he starts, but Trey Turner has been kind of an unsung hero. He is in these eight playoff games that he's played, and that the Phillies have played. He is hitting 500 with a 1525 OPS, only a 12% strikeout rate, a 42% sweet spot rate. League average is around 33%. He's at 42. 35% line drive rate, and a 35% hard hit line drive rate. So
That's
that line drive
crazy.
rate is already like 10 percentage points above league average. But all of those line drives have been hard hit line drives, which hitters hit around 700 on those types of batted balls. Turner also has a 19% barrel rate in the playoffs and a 94.7 mile per hour average exit velocity. Turner, and he's also been doing it on the bases. He has 4 stolen bases in these 8 games, which is a really really good pace and makes sense considering how much he's getting on base. And it is the only 8-game span in playoff history with 15 plus hits, 5 plus doubles, 3 plus home runs, and 3 plus stolen bases. And Trey Turner, out of 213 postseasons by players with 25 plus batted balls in the StatCast era, Trey Turner's 2023 postseason has the highest hard hit line drive rate. So it's been unbelievable to see what he's been doing, especially considering where he was at in like early August.
Yeah, I mean, the standing ovation really changed him uh for the better, no doubt. I mean, it's good that, that contract looks awesome now. Even if he reverts back to whatever he was in, April through July next year, you know, there like we know that it's in there. We know that he's still got it.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's a lot of reason to be alarmed about him come
Mhm.
late July, early August. His OPS was in the 650s. Wasn't like he was really getting unlucky. You put him as a slightly alarming because he
Because
was
he was a slightly alarming.
he was a slightly alarming. He was
I just
whiffing
did my
against.
job there.
Yeah, he was whiffing. That's not an old takes exposed. Like you were right to put him as a
Mhm.
slightly alarming. You weren't projecting future failure. It was just you were talking about his recent failure,
Yeah.
and it had been a massive failure up to like August whatever, because he was whiffing like crazy against forcing fastballs. He was striking out way more in general, and he just got back to wherever he was. He got back to the $300 million player that he is. And this is why the Phillies signed him is to help them win a World Series, and that's exactly what he's been doing in these past 8 playoff games.
Yeah, I mean, he's been awesome to watch, and yeah, it is getting overshadowed a bit because there have been other really good players on the Phillies
Yeah,
throughout these playoffs.
yeah, exactly. Just so many great performances from the Phillies. And yeah, the fact they've even lost a playoff game is kind of shocking,
Yeah,
um, considering how dominant they've been
it
playing.
doesn't feel like it. It's also very funny that like it doesn't feel like they're about to play their third road game, and also it doesn't feel like the Rangers about to play their second home game, considering how long these playoffs have been going on right now. But they are.
Yeah, it is very funny how that all worked out, especially for the Rangers.
Yep.
Like they're 7-0 in the playoffs and they've played 1 home game. That's pretty incredible mark.
So real quick, the Rangers, Phillies, and Astros all won the same number of games, right?
Rangers, Phillies, and Astros, yes.
Yeah. So if it's a Rangers Phillies World Series, Game 1 would be in Texas, right?
I
Because they won the
think
season
so.
series. Yeah.
I think it would be based on head to head.
Yeah. Which is very funny that the opening day matchup ended up determining that if that's the case.
Yeah, like
I'm assuming if the Astros win, they'll just automatically get it because like they won the division.
yeah, we'll dive into those games where Derek Hall was the starting first baseman for the
Yep.
Phillies,
Yep.
and like
Yeah.
the 4 or 5 hitter.
Yeah. Hey, Jacob deGrom did contribute to the Rangers this season. For that, remember that game where he gave up a home run to JT Realmuto and he had like 5 earned runs or whatever it was? That was a huge start. Nobody knew
Yeah,
it though.
it's like, and then I'm analyzing like, well, he did give up 4 extra base hits with sub 92 mph exit velocities,
Yep.
and not enough people are talking about that. There was a lack of luck there.
Yeah.
But but yeah, there was a video about that Rangers, something that happened in that Rangers Phillies series. We have a YouTube short / Instagram reel about it. So
We do, and it might end up mattering. I mean, it
yeah,
probably wouldn't have. Even if the Phillies won that game, the Rangers still would have won the series 2-1.
yeah, that's
But you
true.
know what? Who cares?
Who cares? Yeah, any particular thoughts on how we're outlooking these next whatever 3 or 2 to 5 games that we have left for each series?
I think the Astros do send it back to Houston. I think they can find a way to take 2, especially I mean, Christian Javier versus Max Scherzer might be a mismatch. I know it's a crazy thing to say with Scherzer on the mound, but Javier has been excellent in the playoffs for the last couple of years, and Scherzer, he's a question mark because he's coming back from an injury. He struggled against the Astros his last time facing them. We don't know how that's going to go, and also I think the Astros down 2-0, they're going to have some sort of spark, but it's also possible the Rangers could just continue to surprise us. I think the Phillies probably clinch at Chase Field. Pretty. I think that's probably the safe take to have, right? I mean, they have to win 2 out of 3 when it felt like they dominated the first 2, even though they only won game 1 by 2 runs.
Yeah, I mean the Diamondbacks have two even just above average starting pitchers, and the Phillies crushed both of them, and now they got Brandon Pfaadt to
I
go.
was gonna say, like, who is even starting game 4? Like, I thought it would have been Ryan Nelson, but he pitched out of the bullpen last night.
Like, I think Zach Gallen threw a lot of pitches in
Yeah.
game 1, so I don't know if they go to him.
I'm also curious who the Phillies go to. I feel like it'll be between Christopher Sanchez and Taijuan Walker. Obviously, you know who I'm rooting for in that scenario.
Yeah, I think Christopher Sanchez has objectively been better.
Yeah.
So it just depends what Rob Thompson is feeling. But yeah, I think you have a good point there with Max Scherzer being a question mark. I think a lot of fans see just the name Max Scherzer and they're like, yeah, I mean, I really want this guy out there, which is understandable. He has a good resume, but
I mean, remember, don't forget last time he pitched in the playoffs, he gave up 4 home runs to the Padres.
yeah, exactly.
Like, he's capable of blowing up.
Yeah, like the last time he pitched in the playoffs, he was, he had a blow up start last time he pitched against the Rangers or pitch against the Astros, excuse me. I think it was a bit of a blow up start. So, you never know. Meanwhile, Christian Javier, he had a rough last 3.5 months of the season, but I mean, had a 50% whiff rate against the Twins and allowed 0 runs in 5 innings. So, I Christian Javier in the postseason, like there's a little bit of something to that. We saw that last year. And as far as game 4, yeah, it would be Urquidy versus like Heaney, maybe.
Yeah.
Ray, which seems pretty even. Maybe a bit of an advantage for the Astros, but granted, the Rangers do have the better offense.
Yeah.
I'll reinvite.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the status of these 2 series. Hopefully, they provide a little bit more entertainment value than they've been providing. But there was some news outside of those 4 teams to happen over the past few days. but it was a playoff team that had some news surrounding them. It was the Miami Marlins, as them and general manager Kim Ng have mutually parted ways. Kim Ng is famously known for being the first female general manager in, I think, all of professional sports, or all of the big four professional sports. And she is mutually parting ways with the Miami Marlins. She was credited a lot for how well the Marlins did this year. What were your thoughts on this news?
Yeah, this was pretty shocking news. I think throughout pretty much the whole baseball world. Kim Ng's contract was obviously up this year, so there was some speculation on whether she was going to return. But it sounds like the reason she moved on is pretty disappointing from the Marlins' perspective, where they wanted to hire a president of baseball operations, to be sort of above her in the pecking order of who gets to make the decisions. Um, which, like, for that reason, I understand why Kim Ng wanted to leave. Um, but obviously now they're in search for possibly both a GM and a president of baseball ops. I don't know. What do you think of the whole reporting stuff that came out?
Yeah, it was interesting, especially like, I didn't dive too deep into the details, unfortunately, but just generally when you see that and you see the success of the Marlins this past year, you're naturally going to be a bit surprised and wondering what the Marlins thinking was on it. And I mean, to paint the Kim Ng era of the Marlins in only a brush that highlights their 2023 season would be a wrong way to do it. She's been there 3 years. She's had her successes, more recently success, but she's also had a couple of failures on her part. Some of the signings that she's been allowed to make, she hasn't, the players haven't come through on them. At least with the Avisail Garcia contract, it hasn't been great. I know the farm system development and the draft picks have not been highly complimented, but I don't think there was any real. I don't think the Marlins were justified in trying to put someone above her, especially with how great the Marlins season went and how highly above expectations they were, especially because of some of the trades that Kim Ng made, especially with Jake Berger and Josh Bell. Even the Jorge Soler contract looked pretty good this year, so I was kind of surprised about it.
Yeah, not only that, but also like the Sandy Alcantara extension that happened under her was below his market value, and I think it was before he won the Cy Young. That's
Correct.
another thing that she did very well. I think Kim Ng did a lot of things very well in Miami, and I think overall, she should be remembered as someone that got them to the playoffs and like built some sort of foundation over there. Obviously, not everything went well, but like GMs are gonna have that happen. I don't think they're justified in wanting to have someone above her right now, especially since she just got them to the playoffs. And then I don't say that in a way where like, like, oh, her team got her to the playoffs. Like she got the Marlins to the playoffs because I mean, something that I've said multiple times on this show is that from June through or from August through October, nobody had a better trade deadline than the Miami Marlins. I mean, Jake Berger and Josh Bell, they don't get to the playoffs without those guys. I don't even think there's an argument to be made that they get to the playoffs with those guys. They fundamentally don't. Um, I don't think it's bad to want to hire a president of baseball ops with a GM already in place because they are two different jobs. Like they have two different titles for a reason. And it's a tough thing to do both. Like it's not easy to do both. It would take a lot of weight off Kim Ng's shoulders to have someone else doing the other part of it. Um, but to try to hire someone and put them above you in the decision making, that's something that's going to drive any GM away.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Like it's a bit of a it's a bit of a slap in the face. Like, it's you get to keep the same position, but you don't have the same role. And I'm looking at, like, it looks like I think three of the top four players in B War. And you can say whatever you want about B War, but that's just how Baseball Reference is lined up. But three of the top four players in B War from the Marlins this
2023
year
Marlins. Yeah.
were acquired in Kim Ng trades. It
Yep.
was Luis Ariz. He led the way. And I know that they let go of Pablo Lopez, but they needed Luis Ariz more than they needed Pablo Lopez, who was
Maybe like one of the best win-win trades ever.
exactly. And the Twins needed Pablo Lopez more than they needed Luis Ariz. Then number two is Jesus Luzardo. That's one of the best steal trades of all time. The Marlins got a really, really high quality starting pitcher in Jesus Luzardo, who was already highly touted when he was picked up.
With years of control.
Yeah, with many years of control, and they only had to get rid of Starling Marte, who played 2 months for the A's and didn't make the playoffs. And then
Yeah.
Number four in B WAR was Tanner Scott, who was traded to Miami in 2022 from the Orioles. I can't imagine there was much of a price tag on him, and he was one of the most dominant relievers in baseball this year. So, you know, like exactly, they succeeded because of Kim Ng's moves.
Yeah, I mean it's very weird. I'm sure she'll find another job somewhere. Maybe not immediately as a GM, but I wouldn't be surprised if she's leading another operation somewhere else in the near future. It is definitely a big question mark why the Marlins would have done this because it's not uncommon for teams to hire a president of baseball operations while they have an acting GM or vice versa. But to explicitly say like we're going to put this person above you in who makes the decisions, like that is not something that I can recall happening on too many other instances.
Yeah, and I
Unless
mean,
unless it was like not really an established GM with a big guy coming in, right? Like the Red Sox hiring Dave Dombrowski when they already had Mike Hazen. Like that's a very different scenario.
yeah, and it's like if you want a president of baseball operations who already has success within your organization and led your team to its first, let's call it a spade, its first real playoff appearance since I think like
2003.
2003.
Yeah.
First playoff appearance in a 162 game season since 2003. You could just promote Kim Ng to president of baseball operations. I don't
Hmm.
think that's I don't think that's a hefty thing to do. I don't think it involves
No.
too much
And I
paperwork.
think it's pretty justified as well.
Exactly. Yeah. Um, I, there's not many there are not many GMs that would have been able to put this Marlins team in the playoffs. And Kim Ng has been an overall net positive for the Marlins. And yeah, I mean, I think the Marlins are going to regret this one.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know who they're gonna go with from here. Um, but yeah, it was certainly a question mark. I think there's definitely more they could have done to keep her there. I know that her contract ran out and it was ultimately her decision to leave, but it definitely felt like the Marlins kind of did it to themselves.
Yeah, and hopes to her. I hope she gets a number one position in a bigger market, and
Yeah.
maybe her success can be shined a little bit brighter, shown a little bit brighter. And
Hmm.
I'm a you know professional journalist. I don't know words though. Um, but anyway, uh, yeah, that was a really really weird situation because you can't even say like that the team underperformed. They
Oh,
overperformed.
yeah.
They overperformed this year.
And you also can't say that it wasn't because of Kim Ng.
Exactly.
Like she played a massive role in getting that team to the playoffs.
Like the only real major contributor that was not acquired by Kim Ng was probably Braxton Garrett, who was drafted in 2016. And even then, it's not like she kept him in the organization. She made a lot of trades, but kept him in the
Hmm.
organization. So, and I don't think anyone she's traded has really gone out and done a crazy amount. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think JJ Bleday's out there being an MVP candidate right now.
I mean, respectfully, he's not.
No. Um,
But
anyway, I mean, anything more on the topic?
no, I mean, I think that's it. It's definitely unfortunate news generally for that baseball world that, because Kim Ng is obviously kind of a beacon of uh display of where the game of baseball has gone with diversity and initiatives, I guess, and just someone that I think did very well in her job. I think most of the general populace that actually like paid attention would agree with that. Um, and it is unfortunate that the first female executive tenure like this has to end in this way, but I don't think it'll be the last, especially for her.
Um, yeah, exactly. I mean, there's a reason why she had, I think, 25 or 20 plus years of front office experience prior to this position. There's a reason why she was overqualified to be a GM of the Marlins. And yeah, us speaking highly of Kim Ing is not, I don't know how this is gonna be taken, but it's not a Yas women take. It's like it's
I mean, it is,
she's
but it's
it
also
is, but
like
like and I think
not blindly saying,
yeah,
what it is.
like it's
Like we're giving valid actual reason that we would give to any other GM if they were fired for taking their team to the playoffs after a
yeah,
20-year
like the
162 game season.
the spotlight is shown a little brighter on her because of the history that she made, but also like she was objectively good, and it's not just the fact of like, oh, this is historic, oh, this is this is really cool that we have a female general manager. She was actually really good, and I don't I think the Marlins are going to regret this decision.
Yeah.
Whether or not, if it was Ken Ing, it would also be a bad decision to do this.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. So anyway, anything more before we wrap this up?
I think that's it.
All right. Well, that shall do it for this installment of Above Replacement Radio. We hope you enjoyed this one. We hope you enjoyed this one more than the 2023 MLB playoffs, because they've been pretty atrocious. But if you are listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify and want to watch the conversation as it happens, go to the YouTube channel. It is called Above Replacement Radio, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Check out all the digital content, all of our playlists, including guest interviews and the baseball history series. Also, follow us on social media. Follow me on Twitter at Chris_Gianta. Follow Daniel on both Twitter and Instagram at Daniel_Curran. We both have the stats rolling in. Daniel's got the matchups to watch. I've got, whatever weird stuff is going on in my head that I'm trying to find. And then that does it for this installment of Replacement Radio. We hope to see you next time, where we will be talking, probably wrapping up the, probably recapping the LCSs with how these MLB playoffs are going. So we will see you then.
This conversation is over.